and welcome back to the Citizen Channel and part 2 of our City number 9's look at the legend. Yes, he was a legend. He still is a legend. Of course, still speaks nicely about City despite his problems, and the fans still love him despite the problems. Of course they do. We're going to continue looking at Rodney Marsh. Check out part 1 if you've missed that. We looked at his first full season after the disappointing 71-72 season, which I think he got unfairly blamed for. And we looked back at his first full season, 72-73, where he began to settle down and became City's top goal scorer, of course. We learned about the man who brought him north, of course, Malcolm Allison. He'd gone by the end of this, and many thought as we finished part 1 that even the match day programme sort of had it that Rodney Marsh was on his way as well, but he wasn't. He was still there as we look forward now, or look at season 73-74. I say Allison had gone, the new man at the helm, Johnny Hart, had given Marsh a freer role. And Rodney, now happy in himself, and I was all set up, he sort of withdrew his transfer request to the surprise of many, especially City, who would expect him to make an exit, and all the fans who went home after that last game the season before expecting it to happen as well. It was a revamped board. Yes, a certain Peter Swells had a bigger say. Very shortly after this, he would become chairman. But they all agreed, the board, to Rodney's request to be taken off the transfer list. Of course, one thing Rodney did do is put bums on seats, as Alison said, and that's the familiar phrase. He was an entertainer. So people like Mr. Swells wouldn't be adverse to that, would they? And manager Hart, I don't think he'd left Marsh in any doubt that it was key to the City team that season. We had a good squad again, a good team of possibilities. As I say, it was a bit disappointing the season before, but as well as Bell, Lee, and Somerby, we also had a certain Dennis Law returning to the fold as well. He'd been picked up from United. And there's no doubt that no one had actually come in and bid anything like the 200,000 Rodney Marsh had paid for Rodney Marsh from QPR. So at the end of the day, it was an investment, and the club weren't going to let Rodney Marsh go on the cheap. That's for sure. So Hart probably made him feel comfortable and made him feel wanted, which is what we wanted, and certainly the fans wanted that as well. In fact, due to the arrival of Dennis Law, he would play a different role this season under Johnny Hart. Yeah, more a midfield role, an attacking midfield role. But obviously, I think Johnny Hart aimed to utilise him alongside, of course, the great Colin Bell. So that sounds good, doesn't it? Well, I mean, what a team, what a lineup. The number 9 shirt, though, did the rounds. He wasn't the sole user of that this season. He would wear it, of course, but so too did the usual suspects: Dennis Law, Francis Lee, and Mike Somerby all wore the number 9. But also you got other, perhaps not well known to me, but not perhaps as well known. But you got Frank Carradus wearing the number 9 shirt. Tony Towers appeared wearing the number 9 shirt. Dennis Lehman, remember Dennis Lehman? Barney Daniels wore the number 9 shirt. Is he a future City number 9? Why not? He might be. Who knows? But yeah, so it did the rounds that season. His first goal of the season came from the penalty spot. Yeah, he'd missed one a couple of seasons ago, we commented on the 5th of September at home with a 1-0 win over Coventry. And so City's league form, again, wasn't great. We had a pretty poor away record. That was to be the problem for a few seasons in the 70s. Probably cost us titles. Not anyone coming to the club, just our dreadful away form. But a lot of teams, as I say, as long as you won your own games and got the odd draw away from home, that was good enough to win the league. But there was a lot of good teams capable of doing that. But we did have a run in the League Cup, and Marsh was actually playing with it. Again, he joined City with a little bit of a niggly trouble, and he had a bit of a cartilage problem this season as well. But he would continue playing, and that's how it was in those days. And then we had a new manager. Interesting enough, a manager you think that Marsh wouldn't perhaps rub along with so well, but he seemed to do okay. So you got a new manager in Ron Saunders, who took over from Johnny Hart, who been suffering from poor health and decided to step down. Tony Bucket, of course, had a brief, again, chalk and cheese, Buck and Marsh, briefly in charge until Ron Saunders came. Under Saunders, Marsh appeared to be knuckling down. He was a lot fitter. He lost weight. He was coming back for extra training, stuff like that. And it did see immediate results. He scored his first and only hat-trick, okay, against a lower division team, but his first and only hat-trick for City in a 4-1 home win in the League Cup fourth round replay against York City on December the 5th. In fact, in early February, Marsh was complimentary about the ethos of Saunders and the ethos Saunders had instilled in the team, and reckoned that despite a bottom half league position, which it was, Saunders had turned City into a team only currently bettered in his mind by runaway leaders Leeds United. Oh, that wasn't proven in the league position. And the League Cup final versus Wolves, after 10 qualifying games, I mean, we had to start every round away from home, but we showed showed grit to take these games to replays and even second replays at some stage. And it was a chance for City to prove what Marsh had been saying. Well, that didn't go to plan, unfortunately. Marsh himself would cause even more controversy by not collecting his loser's tankard as he walked straight back into the dressing room after the full-time whistle without looking back, in all fairness. And a lot of the good work he'd put in with his teammates and manager appeared to be partly undone, sadly, by this petulance. He was just upset about losing the game. That was the character he was, and he apologised later on for the damage, but the damage had been done. And that little injury he was carrying would sort of grow into a bigger injury, because we wouldn't see him again for the remainder of the season. Of course, we got rid of Ron Saunders. He was out the door straight away. And again, Mr. Chalk and Cheese with Marsh, Tony Buck was given the job. Interesting enough, as at Ellen Road for that last game of the season that he played, Rodney Marsh, on the 9th of March, amongst a surprisingly small number of Blues for that one. A 1-0 defeat. It was in the cowshed. There wasn't that many. It was 200 or 300 City fans there, I think, from memory. As I say, I was only a young lad. That's all there was. But it was the week after the Wolves defeat, and I think most Blues were still sulking, not wanting to go to that. So I was at his last ever game that season at Ellen Road. If Marsh thought he'd blown it, yeah, I mean, Tony Buck was going to spring a big surprise for the next season. But his stats for the 73-74 season, which I said, we got a trip to Wembley and unfortunately didn't do very well. He'd played 33, won a sub and scored 9 goals. Don't forget that was in his more withdrawn position this season. So on to season 74-75. He had a lucky escape. He went on a holiday to Cyprus pre-season in July, and he visited Cyprus and enjoyed it. Weather was nice. It was great. On his way back to Manchester, the Turks invaded the island and war broke out. So he just about dodged that. So he was a little bit lucky there. And he got his number 9 shirt back. Yeah, not that it wasn't doing the rounds, but Francis Lee had left for Derby. Obviously, we'll mention that later on when Tony Buck's commenting on his stance on Rodney Marsh. And Tony Buck, here we go. We'll get back to that shot, because everyone's shot made Marsh captain. Yes, he named him captain of the team. And City would start the season very well under Rodney Marsh as captain, winning 5 of the first 7 games, only losing once, with Marsh scoring 4 times. He scored 2 in the very opening game of the season, a 4-0 win over West Ham. On his appointing of Marsh as captain, Buck said, "I felt his own performance and attitude will benefit from the responsibility." So there you go. That was down to it. Yeah, just to calm him down, perhaps, make him more a team player, more, and obviously on the pitch. Despite the good start, things, of course, as you'd expect with City in those days, would level off. We either started badly and improved, or started well and eased off, and we had no sort of cup runs to go this season. So it all sort of ambled along. When Rodney's old team, QPR, came to Main Road on the 28th of September, City still sat third after 8 games, and Rodney will score a superb overhead kick against his ex-employers, which would be the only goal of the game. But was delighted with his captain so far, stating his brand of captaincy. This is Tony Buck. This is the early throws, of course. His brand of captaincy has at times been an inspiration, has worked out better than my wildest dreams could have ever conjured up. Despite this apparent early season loving, it was only a matter of time before the quiet and thoughtful manager Buck and his assistant, which we'll talk about in a bit, and the flamboyant Rodney Marsh, of course, would lock horns and have a fallout. At Christmas time, despite Marsh normally wearing the number 9 top, Tony Buck brought in, let's say, a more recognised number 9 to most fans, a target man in a certain Joe Royle. And although it was a quieter season for the fans, I think quite a season. I think the fans had really taken to Rodney Marsh more that season. He was one of the bright spots in what turned out to be quite a low-key season for City. And despite the very good start, where City had topped the table briefly twice back in November, but again, it was our away form. Our away form was awful, with only 2 wins that season in 21 games. Unbelievable stuff. I mean, so, you know, make them 2 wins into 4 or 5. 2 wins into 4 or 5. Make some of the draws into wins as well. I mean, you've got a title. You've got a title competitor, but our away form was absolutely awful. Starts that season, Rodney Marsh himself cited a few City highlights for himself, but obviously the number one was that overhead kick against Queen's Park Rangers. He said his best opponent that he faced was a certain Gordon Taylor. Yes, Gordon Taylor, well known for other things, of PFA, etc. Later on, was his best opponent playing for Birmingham City. That was at the 4-0 I went to on the 16th of November 1974. I went to that one, me and my 3 mates, a bit like Leeds, where we're a bit dodgy. I think there's probably 1,000 City fans there, but a lot of them didn't make themselves known because it wasn't the greatest place to go in the 70s as it isn't probably now. But me and my 3 mates are just glad to get out alive of that one, as we were at Ellen Road as well at that other game I mentioned. It's the first away ground I actually sat down. We decided to go and sit down in the main stand, I think it was at the time, the left-hand corner. I was just so glad we didn't score any goals. We didn't have to celebrate and get sort of pointed at, if you like. But yeah, less aggro sitting down, but that's the only ever. And I think even after that, where I had the option, I think that was the only time I ever sat down at an away game, until obviously the option passed us by many years later, of course. His best opposing team, he noted, was Liverpool, which is fair enough. They finished runners-up that season. His best display, ironically, was just to be a 4-0 defeat again away at Highbury way back on the 24th of August 1974. I think it was our 4th game of the season. And his worst display was just to be a 2-0 defeat at Everton on the 2nd of November. Again, a place I went that season. I don't want to talk, we won't dwell on that one. Season stats, he played 40, none as sub, and scored 10 goals. So a good return. So there you go, after the, well, let's say, getting to know you part of part 1. This part 2, he's okay, he's doing all right, but City just ambling along, getting disappointments, aren't we? But it is all going to go badly wrong, certainly for Rodney Marsh, perhaps for City as well. So join me in part 3 as we look at his time, or his final time with City, as Tony Buck and Mike Doyle literally lay into him through the matchday programme. So join me for this in part 3, and please, if you go back and not watch part 1, watch part 1. What you don't even watching part 2 before you watch part 1. But hope you enjoyed that, guys. Anyway, thanks for watching. Until we meet again, that's one thing, don't I? Please stay safe, Blues. Come on, City. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.